No, it wasn't
I
me.
want to call this board meeting to order. First order of business, the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I'm sorry, roll call, please.
Mr. Ballard?
Here.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Here.
Mr. Williams?
Here.
Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Having a recognition of visitors today. As you can tell, you're a permanent fixture here anymore. So my first hearing of the public, please.
Good evening. I just wanted to make an announcement that tomorrow there's going to be a bus going to Columbus to, what was that again? The Senate Subcommittee, where you could talk about the financial part of the ADC. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay, so that being said, the bus will leave the Italian American Veterans Club on Oberlin Avenue, which is 4567 Oberlin Avenue, and it will be, if you pull in, you go all the way to the back of the parking lot, because we have another affair there during the day, and it does not cost anybody anything to go. And the bus will arrive at 11, and you will leave at 11:30, and then you will leave Columbus at 6:30. So you should be back by 8:30, 8:45. So if anybody wants to go, I'll let Barbie Washington know. Do we have about 30 people now? So we could fit about 20 more people. Okay, so that's it. And I hope people come, so.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Approval of the minutes from the last meeting.
Motion to approve the meetings.
Support.
Motion and support. Roll call?
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Is there any old business today, sir? Anybody have anything with old business? Recommendations from the treasurer.
I recommend for approval, item 8.01, consider approval of a resolution declaring it necessary to renew a $3,126,190 emergency levy for 7 years.
So moved.
Support.
Discussion? Do we need a
Yeah.
discussion on that?
Yeah, we can. I guess I'll start it. Because obviously I'm adamantly against putting a levy on the ballot at this current time and its current conditions that we're faced with in the school district. And I think that I've made my opinion extremely clear about while this district is under the current leadership and this current academic distress commission, I'm not interested in putting a levy out there. However, I do support this motion because it takes 2 resolutions to get the levy on the ballot, and I'm hopeful that some things will change and give us the opportunity, because there's no question in my mind, I don't think anybody sitting at this table mind that a levy, especially a renewal levy, is extremely critical to the future of this school district. And if things do change with the Senate and they change this current climate in public education, it's going to be put right back into our laps. And the last thing we need to do is look at massive cuts because we don't have enough money to run this district. So I just want to be clear that I'm supporting this resolution, obviously right now, but I'm still not in favor of a second resolution until the current climate and leadership of this district has changed, and we get local control back, because I'm not interested in giving more money to the state of Ohio. They want to run this district, they can pay for it themselves. But I think it's important for us to pass this resolution. It's just one step of the process.
Thank you. Anyone else?
As soon as I got on the board, I was the one that was always talking about that we needed a levy because it didn't cost us anything. And I was talking about, do not get confused with policy and politics. And I'm still right there. I thank Bobby, what was it, Bambi and Barbara, and I think the entire board, and I really thank Bill because he has a way of explaining the positive educational policy that made me understand the reason why a lot of people were not for the levy, because of the negative attitude that was in the community, and the levy was sort of set aside because of that. Now, we seem to be backed into a corner because if it's placed into our lap, we are in a difficult situation because we didn't have the forethought of looking ahead, thinking about the students instead of thinking about politics, and using, to me, politics as a bludgeon to keep the CEO in our hands so that he could not do the things that he wanted to do. And just getting in more difficulty with the Board of Education and thinking it became just more divisive in our community. And that is where I was with that. But I thank you for opening my eyes to why you did not want that. And I just was very upset with all the negativity within the community that this has brought, because this is the international city, and this has just divided us in all different directions, and it's sad to see.
Anyone else?
I'm in the same place that Tony is. I'm hoping for some type of resolution to this. I mean, whether it's a complete change and they dump HB 70, or whether Mr. Hardy has an epiphany or a Christmas Carol type event going on where he realizes that he had a chance to work with us, okay, in the beginning. I mean, I can't fathom that somebody wouldn't, because we had an academic distress commission before. We worked very well with them, and things were changing slowly, and they're not going to change fast. If anybody thinks this is going to be a quick fix solution, either way, it's not going to happen. But I'm kind of, like I said, down in Columbus, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that we can do something, because, I mean, I really didn't like all the violence in the schools, and there's some policies that I didn't like. I think there's a lot of things that we could have prevented had we been working together. I think there's things that we could have, we have institutional knowledge that he doesn't have, okay? And I think we could have, kept him out of some of these situations, but that's neither here nor there now. But I'm kind of in the same place Tony is. I'm just hoping we have some type of change.
Anything? Well, I'll just say, at our last meeting, this discussion came up, and just the way our treasurer explained it, I found that it would be no harm getting ourselves better prepared and ready if that change does take place for us to go to the next phase. But by no means am I saying by having this resolution put on and voted through is that all is well and we're moving forward without that change. So we're just preparing ourselves that if change does take place, we will be prepared and ready and have the due diligence done to go into our next level of action. So I don't want to be mistaken that.
We're going into June, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're going into June. Last July 1st, after Mr. Hill closed out everything, he informed us that he had a 20.9 million carryover.
Correct.
And I kept thinking, well, 21 million, 20.9, this is, we're actually we should be in the same place. You know, we should be in the same place. Whether we ran a levy or not, we should be sitting pretty good because we got a 6 million increase on the biennial budget.
Okay.
Okay, so I thought, unless we've spent a lot of money, and that'll all come out soon, but I also heard something that you said that we were going to go into fiscal watch in October.
Based on the forecast, you go into fiscal watch when you're 2 years out of being fiscally solvent. So you go into watch, then into warning, and then you go into fiscal emergency.
When you go into fiscal watch, is that when you have to start reacting to the situation?
There's different, so it kind of ramps up along the process. There's different reporting that starts to take place, yes.
Yeah, because I mean, I know that's, to me, this is what started this whole thing in 2007, when they walked in and said, hey, you're 7.4 million in debt. We started cutting teachers and services, and then in 2010, 2011, we had another, I think it was 21.4 altogether. I figured in 4 years, it was 28.4 or 28.8. And that all equaled into programming for children. I mean, that's how you got to where we were. You don't have a choice on whether you cut things or whether you take a district apart. The state mandates that you cut these things. And there are ways to cut it. And that's how we got to where we actually are.
So, and then the one thing the declaring a fiscal watch is based on the forecast solely. The way the forecast is structured, like I've always stated, like Dale always stated, almost every treasurer looks at the forecast as kind of worst-case scenario. So obviously, I'm going to budget for, kind of every possible outcome, in a sense. So that's why you see some of the carryovers you do. I will say we are trending right now to finish this year better than projected. I would hope so when you're projecting worst-case scenario. So with that being said, we are, I believe, without the renewal. With the renewal, we were getting through 2021. Without the renewal, we were about $250,000 short of getting through 2021. So depending on how we finish out this year, $250,000, I would hope we're finishing much better than that. With a district this size, if you're $200,000 right to that edge, that is cutting it really close for a forecast. When you're talking about a $100 million plus budget, if you're $100,000, I mean, that's nothing.
Yeah.
So
no.
we're going to carry over probably $3 to $4 million more, or we'll be $3 to $4 million better than projected, and that's about the going average, somewhere between 3 and 5 million. So that would be enough to kick us to, punch us out another year to 2022, which should keep us out of the fiscal watch dilemma. But that's also, the $3 million that's factored in there is also factored into the forecast. So you have the without the forecast and with the forecast line.
I'm really torn because of a lot of this, because, I mean, you can ask Bambi. I mean, we worked really hard. I hate to use the word I, but, there was some of us who worked really hard on that levy, and we felt that we were fortunate to get it in 2012. And I hate to give anything up, but then again, I don't, if you don't really know where everything's going, and I think for the last 2 months, we've got the financials like we used to get them, and that was good, but, after a couple of years and just getting them in 2 months, it's like too little, too late, but, I'm just hoping something really good happens one way or the other, I'm done.
So to finish my thought, and I'll like Ms. Yvonne Johnson stated, that the board was kind of in a pickle or backed into a corner. I don't think we're backed into a corner at all. We made our decision on where we stood, and we are still there, but we are giving the treasurer an opportunity to go forward with his due diligence to get us prepared to make a decision if things change. And I want to make sure that the media here gets that right, because some of the local media can make lemonade out of vinegar, and that's not where we are at all. But we are saying we're ready to move to the next stage, getting ourselves prepared. So that's my final statement. All hearts, minds clear? All right.
Just for clarity, all this is doing is giving me the authority to get certified through the auditor's office.
Correct.
It does not allow me to go any further than that. That's when the next resolution would kick in, and that would be what granted the authority to put it on the ballot,
Absolutely.
so.
But we could have done this long before.
We're actually, considering the November election, I would say we're in a good spot. Giving ourselves 2 months for a second resolution is a very good spot.
But to properly answer your question, we had 2 other opportunities we could have done this. That's the
Exactly.
point I think you're
Yes.
making. Roll call.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Recommendations of this, was that all for you?
Yes.
Treasurer? You have anything from our CEO?
I have nothing.
All right.
Just love asking that question, don't you?
Look, we have an agenda that we follow, sir. Is there any new business? We will now have a second hearing of the public, please. We don't do committee reports, but I don't have.
When the last time you've been in a committee?
I appreciate that, though.
Hi, Barbie Washington, Riverside Drive. I was just wondering about the new email for the public records request, if there's a new policy, and what's happening with that.
There's no new policy per se, like a board policy. I was instructed that if I get any more public records requests, to have them resubmit it to that email address. It's my understanding that for the time being, I'm not sure how it will continue beyond the short interim, that we are, meaning myself and my office, are not to fulfill the records. I'm not sure who is responsible for them at this time.
Is that, wait a minute, I
Wait,
mean,
let him finish his thought
Yeah.
first, then we'll let her finish her question, then we'll have our time to talk.
I see.
And in regards to any one of them that are outstanding, I am still continuing to gather those records because I am aware of them, so I have them ready for when I am given the authority to hand them out.
So do you know who then is in charge of that new email?
I do not.
Please.
where do you begin? So who instructed you to do so? I mean, I get that this administration really doesn't care about violating the law because they've done that on multiple occasions. But last time I knew, it was the law that public records requests went through the treasurer of a local school district. So all of a sudden, did legislators pass a new law that I'm not aware of?
Not that I'm aware of.
And you're comfortable with violating this law? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not an attorney, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot. I know Mr. Giardini's sitting at this table, but that is one of the most bizarre and irresponsible things I've ever heard.
So for a point of clarification, what happened? How do we get here?
Yeah.
I was given a directive that the reasoning was, I was told it was because that my office was spending too much time on public records, and that he, meaning the CEO, wanted to find another alternative for freeing up my office's time to work on other things.
Right.
So that that time, he said to forward all public records to the email and to forward him the current list of outstanding records. That's kind of where I stand.
So so right now, he is the person who responds to.
That I don't know. I would assume so by default, meaning I don't have access to the email, so.
And I guess you could hear the suspicion coming from some of my fellow board members, because it's coincidental that we just had a opinion that came down from legal on public records requests, and suddenly we get concerned with how overworked you are, and decide that we're going to reassign the task without reassigning it to anyone, but we're just going to take it away from you after that.
And I'm not saying that.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, I don't know if it was reassigned to anyone. I'm simply saying that I wasn't told if it was reassigned to anyone. I was simply told that I would not be handling it.
So the current records requests that you already have, what happened to those? That would kind of give us a trail on where it's going.
The current ones, I just forwarded the list to Mr. Hardy of any ones that are, any of them are still pending. Now, like I said, just for my comfort level, I'm still gathering those that I'm aware of. So if at any point somebody says, go ahead, move forward, send those out, then I will do so.
I'm just checking my mail because I'm sure there'll be a letter coming out
I have a
anytime
question.
soon. 'Cause
You run
usually
your
how it happens.
departments, I presume. Did you give any indication that your staff was compromised by this or overworked by it? Or, I mean, I'm trying to figure out how one could conclude that your staff was spending too much time unless someone would have said, hey, man, this is just, I remember when we had our first distress commission, and we would get complaints because there was just so much information that had to be, and that was just the way it was, that was the rule, so do it. Again,
He, meaning the CEO, has always asked from our office to see the current list of records requests and the quantity and all that. So he was well aware of the quantity. At no point, I mean, in my opinion, I'm more of a control freak anyways, and Eden will vouch for that. It's like, I want to be the one to handle them anyways, because I know in a lot of those, there's sensitive information in it. So my comfort level, knowing that I believe it's per ORC, and that the treasurer is the public records officer. So I know at the end of the day, I'm on the
This is
line.
crazy.
But, again, that's one of those tough spots that if I'm instructed to do so, and the fine line of what I should do and what I'm being told to do, and that's why I'm continuing to answer the ones that I have in my possession, and, or not answer, but to at least gather, so I have them in hand. But the other ones,
if I could make a recommendation, through the chair, I presume there was some correspondence that came to you with this directive.
yes.
That correspondence should be sent to our legal folks, and then they can look at it and see if it's,
And I was just getting ready to state to our legal that I don't want to have, you shouldn't have to debate this on open floor from a hearing from the public, or do you think it's something that we need to go into executive session to further discuss, or are you comfortable with any kind of a thought process at this time?
First of all, as you mentioned, the law department, Mr. Riley couldn't be here today, so he asked if I would attend. The law department's already issued a legal opinion about public records requests. You're correct, as several of you have already noted, the treasurer, by law, is tasked with responding to public records requests because the treasurer, he or she, is the person by law who keeps the records. Traditionally, going back to when Dale Weber was the treasurer, all public records requests, of course, went to him because he's the records keeper, and then he would input them, he would put a number on them, and he wouldn't always necessarily himself go out and get the records. He would then send that task to the appropriate department.
We'd still request them of another department. That's
Exactly,
still,
because
still was
that's
the
where you're
process.
still doing it. But ultimately, and the problem that the treasurer will face with this is that at the end of the day, the treasurer, the office of treasurer is not one created by the school board. It's a position that's created by law. It can't, you guys couldn't change it if you wanted to. You don't have any input into that. It's a revised code requirement. And unfortunately, I won't say unfortunately, I shouldn't say that. The statute, it requires that the treasurer respond. So ultimately, the buck really will stop with the treasurer's
I'm
office,
ultimately responsible.
not with the CEO's office. Ultimately, it's the treasurer's office. And in other words, if someone were to file a lawsuit to get a record, he's going to be a party named as a defendant because he's the one that's required to provide it. I will definitely pass this on to the law director. I'm not going to offer any additional opinions because I don't really think it's necessary at this stage. I probably, like Mr. Williams, would like to see the correspondence that went to the treasurer with regard to that, but I can only tell you what the law is. Hasn't changed. I don't think House Bill 70 ever changed that provision. In fact, I don't think House Bill 70 changed any of the treasurer's responsibilities, one of which you just authorized them to do today, which is to go to the auditor and get certified the renewal. because that has to happen before you can even consider putting it on the ballot. It's a statutory obligation of the treasurer. You couldn't give it to anybody else. You couldn't give it to the CEO if you wanted to. Josh is the person who has to, by law, go get it. And it's really no different than with the public records request. But I will pass it on to Mr. Riley in the law director's office and see how he wants to deal with it. It's not going to be necessary for to ask for a formal opinion. I'll pass it on to him, to the extent you're interested, once you get a copy of whatever was sent out. Okay.
Very good, thank you. So will you send that
I'll
forward
forward
to
you
me,
the email,
please? Thank you.
And this is a prime example of, I don't even know how long ago I brought it up, to the treasurer currently in this school district is in violation of Ohio Revised Code simply for the fact that he is operating in two different positions. He is whatever chief innovation and strategy, chief of innovation and strategy, and by law, he's the treasurer of the school district, which I believe Ohio Revised Code says the treasurer cannot function in two separate positions within the same school district. So this is a prime example of why this is just so bad.
Thank you. Anything further from the public?
Summer Harvey, 2204 East Skyline Drive. I just moved, sorry. If I may address Mr. Hill through the chair, please. Is there a timeline as far as when you receive a public records request to when you must fulfill it? I know it's like within a reasonable time, but that could kind of be, okay. So because I know there've been some from the beginning of April that still have not been returned. And then you mentioned that you have some and you're just waiting to get permission. Now, say before Hardy was here, was that always the procedure? You would gather the information and then ask, whether it be the superintendent or school board or whoever, okay, now I need permission to give this, or did you just turn it over as per your process of fulfilling the public records request?
Once it was fulfilled and redacted, at that point, I would just turn it on, or pass it on to the requester.
So why do we need permission now?
Because I was instructed so.
Okay. That's troubling. That's troubling.
Anything further from the public? Hearing none? When is our next meeting, sir?
June
I
11th.
think we do have one, I'm sorry.
Maybe?
I thought she was coming this way, I'm sorry.
June 11th.
June 11th. 5 o'clock, right here? Need a motion to dismiss?
Yep, motion to adjourn.
Second?
Roll call?
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Thank you all for coming.
This has been a production of Lorain City Schools TV 20 WLCS.